Irreverent. Entertaining. Cool. You're listening to the only radio that matters. BBS Talk Radio. You're listening to The Art of Love with your host Lucia, only on BBS Talk Radio.
Hello, yes, it is my party, and welcome everyone to The Art of Love. And to all my international guests, I'd like to say benvenuti, bienvenue, bienvenidos, and willkommen. Yes, I am showing off. I do that once in a while. And as usual, I am on the 36th floor of a beautiful building in downtown LA, and actually it is a secret location because I don't even know the name of the building, I realize. If you say, what building are you in? I'd be like, I don't know. Anyways, we have a great show today, and I'm not just saying that. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, we have a great show today. No, trust me. Everyone that listens will be transformed. Men will become women, women will become men. I was up early this morning making notes because I am so excited about this topic, and it is about women's infidelity. We're going to be busting a lot of myths, and as a friend of mine wrote to me on MySpace, busting a lot of balls too. So I'm Lucia, your host, a dating and relationship expert, in case you hadn't figured it out. And I'm here every Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And I help you with your dating dilemmas. I take live calls. I have great authors on as guests, like the one today. I have other experts, dating and relationship experts, because I can't know everything. I know almost everything. I, of course, have news items once in a while. There's something interesting happening in the news with love and dating. I'm so happy to answer your emails and, of course, to take your calls regarding your emails. There's always Celebrity Corner, and if we have time today, I will make my comment on Pink, the fact that she's getting divorced. I actually met her a few years ago, so hopefully I'll be able to tell you a little bit about that encounter. And once in a while, I will sprinkle the show with my love life, if I feel like it. If I know it's not going to get me in trouble, I have to be careful what I say. If you were listening last week, you may recall Doc Love was on, and he very nicely sent me an email later on saying that I was a great interviewer. So thank you so much for that. That was actually my first interview. So I just look at interviews like a phone call, like I'm just talking to the person. I don't try to make an interview. I was just very curious about what he had to say. And that's how I do my interviews, which I think is probably the best way to do it, right? Instead of trying to sound all professional, which honestly I don't sound all professional. And he was actually nice enough to send me a gift of songs, the CDs of songs. I'm not sure why. I haven't listened to them all yet. I need to ask him why the CDs. So today's guest, she'll be calling in a few minutes, is Michelle Langley. And she wrote a book called Women's Infidelity. And the actual title, the whole title, is Women's Infidelity, Living in Limbo, What Women Really Mean When They Say, I'm Not Happy. How many times have you heard that, guys? And we're going to talk about the fact that women are really not as monogamous as they have been thought to be. And that maybe encouraging that myth of female monogamy is just a way of keeping women's sexuality down. Because what if women were just as into sexual pleasure and having as many partners as men were? Then what would happen? So we're going to discuss that. And her website, if you'd like to go to it before she calls in, is women'sinfidelity.com. Do you know how to spell infidelity? High Infidelity? There was an album called High Infidelity. Now I'm revealing my age. I was just a baby when that came out. I was 2, but I could read. Yes, let me spell it for you. WOMENSINFIDELITY.com. Women's Infidelity. All right. And my website is theartoflove.net if you've not been there yet. And you can see all my comings and goings, my articles, clips from my TV show. And what else do I have there? I have so much in there, I don't know what I have. You can call in for counseling, make a phone appointment to call in. And I don't know. There's so much going on that website, I can't remember. And then, of course, I have a book titled Lucia's Lessons of Love. LLL. Notice the alliteration for those of you paying attention. And that is, I call it the Cliff Notes to Love, Dating, and Relationships. And it's an easy read because it's written in Q&A form. I ask a question, and then I answer it. I ask a question, and then I answer it. And it's not the usual questions, you know. I try to do things differently. And it's questions. Oh, hi there. Oh, let's answer it. What's up? Hello?
Hi, this is Michelle Langley.
Hi, Michelle. It's Lucia. How are you doing?
Fine, how are you?
I am so excited about this interview today, and I'm not kidding.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. This is the first time we've ever spoken, isn't it?
I know, and I know you gave me the book several years ago.
Yeah.
And I had said I was going to write an article about it. And
oh, okay.
You probably don't remember, but I do. I remember all the promises I made. And I always try to fulfill my promises, so I felt bad that I had never written the article. And in fact, I had never even finished the book. I took it with me to Miami, I took it to Las Vegas, and I still hadn't finished it. And now that I got this radio show a few weeks ago, I thought I need to have Michelle on because I love what I've read so far. And yes, I did finish the book, so fear not.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I finished it.
I guess you haven't read the second book.
Oh no, there's another book?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm working on a third. The second book is a step-by-step for women to break out of limbo.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to get the second book from you another time, but let's discuss the first book now. I was up early this morning.
Yeah, because the second book's not published yet.
Okay.
Well, it'll be in print like in June.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to it definitely, but I was up early this morning making a ton of notes, and I have a ton of questions. But why don't you, tell me a bit about your background so everyone will know who you are and how you came to write your book, Women's Infidelity.
Okay. Well, basically, I started writing the book. I was like 27 years old, and I noticed that there was just a distinct difference in the way that I was feeling. Mm-hmm. And I just started asking some questions because it was so distinct. And anyway, the responses I got were just, it was just very bizarre that no one wanted to talk about it, you know. Because the first place I went to my mother, and she just, you know, she didn't want to talk about it. She had a kind of a grin on her face, but then, you know, and we had a very open relationship, but you could just tell it was a taboo subject. And I experienced this regularly with women that I knew. And so I just knew that there was more to this than, you know, there was something going on and I wanted to know what it was. So that's basically how it started.
Wonderful. Okay. So, well, let me start because I went to your website and I'm going to ask some of the questions that you posted about what the book answers, and then I'll give you all my millions of questions here. So why is it that females push males for commitment?
Well, it's because as they're taught that males don't want commitment, and in the past, up until very recently, I mean, in the last, few decades, women needed to get a commitment from men because that's how they were going to be supported. It had nothing to do with relationships. It had nothing to do with female insecurity, anything other than financial. There was no other way for a woman to be supported. You know, so getting a commitment from a man was basically getting a job.
Right.
You know, that was the male was the female's employer. You know, so men viewed their bosses in the same way that women viewed their husbands. It was the same type of setup.
Okay, so now that women are more financially independent, it seems like we were still pushing males for commitment. Is it because it's still in our psyche?
Well, this is something that's been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And we're still, you can watch TV and you can still see things and hear things about the way things used to be. And they're just not like that anymore. You know, and unfortunately, women are conditioned to believe still that men don't want commitment and that they do want commitment. And it's not to say that women don't want relationships, but getting a commitment from a male, being in a relationship is not nearly as important to females as that it's been led to believe. I mean, in the past it was important. That's how they ate.
Right.
You know, that's
Survival.
how they put a roof over their head.
Right.
But females are not naturally insecure. The male is actually more insecure than the female.
Wait a minute. Okay, so why do you say that? That's very interesting.
Well, all females, the female animal, including the human animal, it comes with a built-in purpose, you know, to have offspring.
Right.
The male doesn't have that purpose, so the male has to find their own purpose. So there's an innate insecurity in males to begin with. And not to mention that males have no idea, you know, if offspring produces theirs, which also creates an insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that not
females
changing?
Don't have that.
Yeah, but now that we have the paternity test, that's probably changing their thought pattern in terms of...
Well, the thing is that men are still operating under the old belief system, too. You know, this goes around and round in circles at women'sinfidelity.com, you know, the posters on the message boards. The men continuously talk about how it's worse for women to cheat. They have no idea why they think that. The reason they think that is because that males would have had to have, you know, provided for offspring that wasn't there. That's the only reason that we had that belief. And, you know, men should have their children paternity tested at birth, period. Mm-hmm. And we can go ahead and get rid of the double standard, and, you know, the sexes can start respecting each other and appreciating each other, as opposed to each one wanting something from the other. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So in the past, women wanted men's money, and men wanted sex.
Right. Now, I've always heard that if a woman cheats, a man is less likely to forgive her than if a man cheats, the woman is more likely to forgive him. Have you found that?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, there is a good article somewhere on the web. It's called Gender Differences Between the Sexes in Terms of Infidelity. Mm-hmm. There's absolutely no difference in the way men react as opposed to the way women react. Men are just as likely to forgive their spouse. And in today's world, I actually think men are more likely to forgive than women, because women are being raised to not tolerate cheating.
Right.
You know, whereas men are still being raised that it's not natural. You know, women aren't naturally inclined to cheat. Mm-hmm. So men are completely caught off guard by it.
Yes.
So I think that, but in this article, they said the only difference is that men feel more isolated because they're less likely to reach out for help. But if you go to any message board and read the post, you will have no idea whether it's a man or a woman speaking. They say the same things, they do the same things.
Right. Now, why is it that females are thought of as naturally monogamous and males also think that, but yet it's not true?
And what was the last part of that question?
Sorry, I confused you. Okay, let me just read what it said. Okay, why females think they're naturally monogamous and why males think so too?
Well, up until, you know, males and females were taught that women were naturally monogamous, so that men would have no problems in supporting women. Because it would be really hard to get a man to support a female if he believed she was as likely to cheat as he was.
Right.
Because he's not gonna, every child that came into the world, he'd be thinking, is that one mine? And not to mention, men sometimes have that suspicion anyway. As a matter of fact, I interviewed a girl from Africa once, and she said that the one thing that they were taught as young females is you never ever mention anything about the way a child looks other than it looks just like the dad. She says there's no joking, there's nothing. When a baby's born, it always looks just like the dad.
Even if it doesn't.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And actually, I heard a statistic, I can't remember exactly what it was, that guys that think they're the father, in 30% of the cases, they're really not the father. Yeah, I've heard as high as 30%.
Yeah. And there was also, I read an article where an older woman said, in my day, women just knew not to speak of those things. You know, it was something that you just didn't talk about. And I happen to have, over the years, in my circle of friends, I have someone who, it was common knowledge that one of the children wasn't the father's, but nobody talked about it.
Right.
You know, you just knew not to talk about it.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's a good way to go. Okay, now, why is it that women lose sexual desire for their husband?
Well, I think it's the same thing that you experience with men. Is familiarity does, kill sexual desire.
Mm-hmm.
And with women, they just don't, up until recently, women just sit and view sex as something that was for them.
Mm-hmm.
They were raised that sex is for the male. Sex is something they do for the male.
Yeah.
And so when they get into their marriages, a lot of them were using sex to either, withholding sex in order to get a commitment. It was never something that they just did for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not the most enjoyable of experience, it's just something they do. And, so then they get married and it just becomes another job that they do.
Right, that's how they viewed it, but now they're starting to wake up and realize it's not just another job.
Right, but they're having that sex with men up.
Yeah, that's how
I mean, really what you'll see is that, that what's interesting too, and this is just such a heated topic.
It is.
Is when you're talking with men about this, men are becoming very, I find that men become very self-righteous, like women used to be, like how can a woman cheat? How can a woman cheat? And those are things that women used to say.
Right.
How could a man cheat?
Yeah.
And men would be, say things like, it's not that big a deal, it's just sex, and on and on and on. So it's really interesting, the things that we say in order to try to manipulate the other sex.
Right. Right. The tables are turning. So what is it that women really, really do want sexually?
Well, I think that women want more sex per sitting.
Longer.
Sexual, really, I think affairs are very conducive to female sexuality. In an affair, typically, when people get together, they spend 2 or 3 hours in bed.
Wow.
And that's what they do. It's a full sexual experience, lots of touch and lots of, sometimes multiple orgasms. And the sex that happens in marriage typically is not like that at all.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Women don't find just don't find marital sex very satisfying.
Could it be maybe they're with the wrong person, or is it the guys just, they don't care, they figure they have you and they don't need to try as hard in bed?
Well, I think it's a combination of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I do think that men don't sometimes put as much effort into their marriages because they think that women, that just getting married was what the woman wanted.
Right. And she'll be happy forever.
It's really important that both sexes understand that they are contributing to the problem. It's not one sex's fault. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's societal beliefs that are causing the problem, and each sex. I've done a lot of research since women's infidelity, and there's a lot of things that women are really, really being conditioned to not like men, and it's really unfair.
Definitely.
A lot of the beliefs we have about male behavior and their bad behavior isn't necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that's involved in this problem.
And you say that marriage and fidelity can actually be more difficult for women than it is for men?
Well, the reason being is, one, we don't teach women about their sexuality, and two, women move into their sexual prime as they age. So not only is a woman unprepared because she hasn't been taught that sex is important to her,
right,
but then she moves into her sexual prime, and it becomes hugely important.
Yeah.
Because her estrogen levels drop and her body's being affected more by testosterone. So now she's, has all this sexual desire, and she naturally attributes it to something wrong in her marriage, because why else would she be feeling this way? Because she wasn't taught that she was ever going to desire multiple sexual partners. I think with younger girls we might see less of a problem with this, because younger girls are, I don't think young girls are quite as
sexually knowledgeable,
have the beliefs that we had.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a double standard, but it with the younger generation, I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was.
So this probably explains why, because I do a lot of talk on cougar relationships, older women, younger men. So this probably explains why older women and younger guys seem to really go well together.
Absolutely. That's something that, has been, that's something that, isn't really in the past, wasn't discussed, especially when I was doing the research for my book. But it's becoming much more common knowledge now. But women are attracted to younger males just like men are attracted to young females. Well, this isn't something that's ever been talked about,
Till now.
But it makes sense. It definitely makes sense that if, we say that females are attracted to older males if they need money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The older male has more money.
Usually, yeah.
But when it comes just down to sex, the female isn't attracted to an older male for sex.
No.
It's for, can this older male take care of me?
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely, I talk with women and there's definitely an attraction, a strong physical attraction towards younger males.
Oh, absolutely. So, your book was the first time that I had read that women initiate the majority of the divorces, and even if they're married to men who treat them well and love them. So why is that they are the ones initiating most of the divorces?
Well, I think that women, like I said, women think that they want to get married. Mm-hmm. They think it's going to be the greatest thing on earth, and then they get into marriage, and they don't find it to be very, very satisfying.
Right.
And plus they start moving into their sexual prime. They start naturally becoming more independent, and it just doesn't feel right to them. What's really happening is we're dropping our roles. The roles of the past, that they were just that. They were roles. The role of husband, the role of wife. And the role of wife, in the traditional sense, does not feel natural to women anymore. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel natural to pretend like this is what I want. I want to take care of you and, mop the floors, and I want,
right.
This is what I want to do, It just doesn't feel natural. And that I'm, the wife that doesn't have sexual desire, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Women get into it and they just like, this just doesn't feel right. If a woman has, money,
mm-hmm.
If she isn't afraid of taking care of herself,
right.
the role just feels funny.
Yeah, I've never been married, and people always say to me, how come you've never been married? And, to be honest, I just really never felt the need to be married. I didn't think there was anything there for me. I've always been pursuing different artistic careers, singer, model, et cetera, and I just never thought, I want to get married and have children. It's like, I really don't care. And I think probably more and more women are starting to think like that.
Yeah, it is true. And, it would be a lot easier. This is a really difficult time that people are going through because relationships are in transition. And we're transitioning out of an old belief system. Mm-hmm. And that belief system was in place not because it's the way things were, the way they really were. It's just that, it was what was necessary at the time.
Because of the economics.
And, it had nothing to do with what was natural. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But, and so these belief systems, this is why it's so hard for people, because women are really struggling with, the feelings of this isn't what I want, but yet they've been conditioned to believe this is what they want, and it's a very torn feeling that they have. And society's not making it any easier either, because, for the last several decades, there has been like a mission to make, males bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really unfair as well. So women have been raised, for the last 30 or 40 years to believe that men are bad, mm-hmm. and that they're good, right. And, I found a lot of interesting stuff as far as domestic abuse and men being equally abused as women in relationships, mm-hmm. Women molesting children, which is something we don't care very much about.
No.
All of this stuff is covered up. And so this just fuels the fire for women.
Right. And, it's interesting that women are always the ones that think they want to get married and have a commitment, and yet they're the ones that file for divorce, whereas with men, you always think, oh no, they don't want to get married, they resist it, and then once they're married, they're happy, and they don't want to get divorced.
Yeah, and men are, from what I understand, and I discussed this in the second book about men actually being kind of naturally more committed than women. Mm. A man doesn't base his commitment on feelings. Mm-hmm. If he thinks, my wife doesn't, excite me like she used to, that has no bearing on whether or not he's committed to her. you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's committed to that situation. So whereas a woman is everything's based on the way that she feels.
That's
and
right.
feelings come and go.
Right.
So as far as commitment, women can be much less reliable than men.
I totally agree. What about the old double standard that, women are always afraid to sleep with a guy too soon because they think that he's not going to take them seriously? Do you find that still exists?
I think that sometimes it exists if a woman really likes a guy. I think that women gauge their behavior based on how they feel about the guy.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not interested in the guy long term, they'll sleep with him whenever they want,
Yeah.
10 minutes after meeting him if they want. If they, feel that it might hinder them being able to be in a relationship with a guy, they might hold out for a period of time. So I think it just depends on what's on their mind. And I think some women just don't care.
Right.
And the thing is that women need to have sex if they want to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
And no ulterior motive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
If the man's going to leave you because you didn't wait 72 hours
Right.
and 32 minutes to have sex with him,
Yeah.
screw it.
Yeah, yeah, he's old
So,
paradigm.
I mean, that's just silly. It's manipulation.
Right. Which of course I think is leading now to this hookup culture that I'm sure you've heard about happening in college, where people are just meeting and
Right.
doing it on the first date. What do you think of all that?
Well, I think that it's very much like a drug. It's like drinking. It's like anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're using it for a quick thrill. And I think that probably within a short period of time that it probably becomes boring to them.
Yeah.
I think that, shaming people just creates more desire.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that probably I haven't interviewed anybody on any college campuses. I am well aware of,
What's
the
going on?
sexual escapades going on now.
Yeah.
And, I don't think that there's anything that we can do to prevent it. I think that, sex is natural and people are going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, hopefully in the near future we'll stop using each other to manufacture. But the only way to understand this type of stuff
Mm-hmm.
is through experience, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell, if you tell your kids the truth, one thing, which a lot of parents don't tell their children the truth. They just say, wait till you're married, or don't have sex, or
Right.
it's great with the person that you love, whatever.
Yeah.
It can be great with someone you don't even like.
Yes.
So, if we're more honest with our children, and then what they learn through experience too, when they go, you know what, that was just a quick thrill, and it was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's why men can be more committed as well, is because they're not deluded about sex.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a woman's thinking, oh my God, this is the greatest feeling on earth.
Yeah.
A woman can fall in love after, because of sex.
Mm-hmm.
That was great sex. I'm in love.
Yeah.
So she connects that feeling, that intensity with love, whereas the man doesn't do that.
Is that
He's like,
because
that was great sex.
is that because of the oxytocin?
Well, no, it's because that women are taught that they wouldn't want to do that unless they had those feelings. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing is that when we talk about commitment, we confuse that with bonding.
Mm-hmm.
A woman can have a very close, feel very close and bonded to someone she has sex with right after she has sex.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean she has to be exclusive with that man. There's no natural exclusiveness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we confuse. When we really, and I hope that I don't take this in another direction because I don't want to confuse anybody, but when we talk about the old system, old system, most people think that the old system was women traded money for sex.
Mm-hmm.
That really wasn't how the system works. The system worked where women were sexually exclusive in exchange for being provided for.
Ah.
You see, there's a difference. When you understand that, then you know that, women aren't naturally monogamous. That was the trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
You support me, and I won't sleep with anybody else.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
So, just some DNA testing, we found many animals that they thought were monogamous aren't monogamous. The offspring isn't, You know, it doesn't belong to the mate that the female's mated to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so at ovulation, women are inclined to, you know,
to cheat.
have sperm. You know,
Yeah.
I was reading this one study in one of my books that said that they had, in 20 years of observing these animals, I believe they were gorillas, never once saw a female cheat.
Uh-huh.
And yet, when the DNA testing came about, they found that the offspring wasn't with any of the males in the tribe that they were with, or whatever they call it. I don't know what they call it, but anyway. But then they started watching and noticed that the females wandered off once a month for a day. And so, you know, and then this urge to, for multiple partners, you know, so I would assume that young females have this urge once a month to gather sperm, and then as we age, and move into our sexual prime, this desire for multiple partners is much more frequent.
Yeah, you know, I always tell women, I say, until you have a commitment, you should date at least 2 or 3 guys at the same time. You know, call it a pair and a spare. And
right.
But I always make sure to include, if it's in my column in parentheses, date, but not necessarily sleep with other guys. Because if I say, you know, date, but you can also sleep with 2 or 3 guys at the same time, everyone would be up in arms and going like, what? What do you mean sleep with 2 other 3 guys at the same time? But that's actually what I really feel. It's like, if you want to sleep with 2 or 3 guys, go ahead. But yet society will knock you down if you try and do that.
Well, see, here's the thing, you know, when you think about what women, you know, a lot of times men will say women just seem to want so much so soon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a reason for that. In the past, a man, he might be dating 2 or 3 women and sleeping with them.
Right.
He's having a great time.
Uh-huh.
Whereas a woman, she couldn't have more than one partner.
Yeah.
Because this would lower her value.
Right.
So all of her needs had to be filled by that one guy that wasn't wanting to see her very often.
Right.
I remember talking to this one woman, and she said that she had been seeing this guy, and she just wanted more. They got together once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, and you know, he kept telling her, I don't want anything more than this. And she said something finally clicked with her, and she started dating other men.
Right.
And having sex with other men. And she said she would never want to commit to anyone again like that. She said once she got that out of her head, that she would feel bad about herself.
Yeah.
You know, she was like, no wonder these men don't want to commit. You know, she said it was just her shame that was keeping her from trying to get this one man to fulfill her needs.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
you know, which is not to say that women don't want relationships, because some women do want relationships, and we go through periods in our life where having a committed relationship is something that we want, and times in our life when having a committed relationship isn't what we want.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we go through phases, and we're starting to become more conscious. Instead of, you know, looking at things as this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, we need to make conscious decisions about what type of life we want to live.
Right.
You know, if you're going to make a commitment to be with someone for the rest of your life, then you need to know up front that this is not something that's natural. This will be a decision that you have to make, knowing that there will be many times along the way that you're not going to want that.
Right.
You know? And I don't think that women do that. And a lot of women don't go into their marriages. This is something else that, you know, a lot of women don't go into their marriages thinking this is going to be forever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And men do. And that's really not fair. Men need to understand that a lot of women today don't think of marriage as forever. They see it as a step. One step in their journey.
Right. If it lasts, it lasts. If not, then move on.
Right. You know, but yet they're entering into this union, leading this man to believe that they are thinking of it forever. Mm-hmm. See, and that's really not fair.
Right.
So I think women are going to have to, you know, become more honest about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And also, just to add to something you said earlier about women, they want a commitment sooner because they're only dating one guy. That, you know, really explains why women, when they start dating someone, they usually want a commitment within, you know, a very short period of time, like within a month. Whereas
right, because they don't want to lose their value. I don't want to sleep with you if you're not going to be around for a while, because then I won't be as valuable to the next guy.
Yeah, whereas
that's kind of how they're conditioned to think, how women are conditioned to think.
Mm-hmm. You know, whereas guys, because they are dating other women, or because they just take a longer time to make a commitment, they usually take like 3 to 6 months to finally decide they want to be exclusive.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Because they know the woman usually wants a commitment. They know any woman they date, oh, she's going to be asking for a commitment, so they wait for the signs of being pushed into it. And yet, if the woman doesn't, then they go, well, wait a minute, why isn't she pushing me for a commitment? What's going on?
Right.
They're surprised.
Yeah, and then, because, the ego is set up, and I'm not talking about the male ego, I'm talking about the ego period, the ego in women and men. It's set up to what it can't have. That's just how the ego works.
Ah.
So, if the woman wants commitment, the man doesn't. If
right.
the man wants commitment, the woman doesn't. And it's, and this is all because we don't understand enough about ourselves. The old system was set up so that each person wanted something, and that each person thought that that the other person didn't want what they wanted. So, which kept the desire there,
Yeah.
And kept people locked together, without going into relationship with conscious thought. There was no conscious thought into, I need someone to support me. And for men, I need to get sex. Mm-hmm. I want to procreate. And a lot of men do want to procreate. That's something we don't talk about very much either. A lot of men, in the past it was always, women just want to have kids and the men didn't want to have kids. Men want to have kids.
Yes, they do. And, also just, before I forget, earlier we were talking about the hookup culture, and you said in your book, and I'll quote directly, it said, women are being shamed. Women allow shame to manipulate their sexual behavior, but still they will no longer feel they have to deny, explain, or defend themselves, which I think that's what's happening now with the hookup culture. They're like, you know what, I'm a sexual being.
Yes. I think that's exactly what's happening. Now, in the next decade, I think we're going to see a real shift, though, with men.
Uh-huh.
Men are going to stop supporting women. Mm-hmm. Men are going to, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And there's also going to be a big shift in, I think that we'll come to a point where men will no longer be required to pay child support. Mm-hmm. Men will have joint custody of their kids. I think joint custody is going to become mandatory. Yeah. I think that we're going to get a male birth control pill. Mm-hmm. Right now, women have men over the barrel.
Yeah, they do.
So these things are going to change. And this side of the story you don't hear a lot about. And in my second book, the largest chapter in the book is about that specifically. Because we don't hear about this stuff, so women don't really understand the male side of the story, mm-hmm. And again, that just fuels anger. But just as women are going to no longer be shamed about their sex, men are no longer going to be shamed about their feelings and about money and about feeling that pressure to provide for women. Mm-hmm. Because there is no need for men to provide for women anymore. They did it in exchange for women's sexual exclusiveness.
Yes.
And women aren't doing that anymore.
Right.
Because, basically a woman was a man's property, mm-hmm. and it's because, and the children were the woman's property. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. But the woman was her property, his property, so it all kind of worked. Well, now we still view children as women's property, mm-hmm. but women are no longer men's property.
Right.
So in terms of offspring and reproduction, men aren't getting a fair shake right now.
No, they're not, especially with having to pay alimony.
Yeah.
A lot of the
time.
time.
Well, I really don't think that there should be any money transferred.
I
think that, there should be joint custody. You pay for your children when you have them, and the man pays for it when they have them. I was watching I was watching a talk show, mm-hmm. and the woman on the talk show said, women are ahead of men right now. Men are still thinking traditionally. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, 10 minutes later, on the same talk show, mm-hmm. a woman said, what women need to understand is that when they go on a date, they need to make the man pay for it. And I just busted out laughing. I thought, here they are saying that men are still traditional, and they don't even recognize that they're wanting to keep the traditional part themselves.
Right.
Why in the world would a man have to pay for a woman's company? That doesn't make any sense. Because the only reason he did it in the past was to get sex from her.
Yeah.
So
who do you think should pay on the first date then?
I think you should pay for your own shit.
Wow.
Or if you want to take someone out to dinner, take them out to dinner. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that a man should. Why would a man have to pay for a woman's company?
Well, is he paying for her company?
Why would that be?
Or is he just showing that he can provide, or that he's interested in her because he's spending money on her?
Well, I mean, in the past, that's what he did. So to let her know, I can provide for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah.
You know, he was getting something from her. But think about it. If a woman wants to have sex just as bad as a man does, why is he paying for her company? You know, I mean, can you imagine paying for someone to go to spend time with you?
Well, guys do that all the time.
Huh?
Guys do that every day.
And they do, and that's terrible for men's self-esteem.
Yeah, that they have to
You
pay
know,
for
I mean,
company.
men think that, yes, I have to, and that's not what women want from men anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Women typically will take the nice guys that will pay for their stuff
Mm-hmm.
and sleep with the bad boys that won't do anything for them.
Right. I know. That happens
So,
a lot.
you know, and I think that that's something that's probably going to be explored more too, is that women have, you know, their mating techniques. We don't know a lot about female sexuality because it's something that we weren't supposed to know anything about.
Right.
And I think that, you know, there's a different type of male that a woman's attracted to when she's ready to bear offspring,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, you know, when she wants to have sex.
Right. Because usually the stable guy is the more boring guy, and he's not as sexual as the guy she wants to have sex with.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately. Why can't we get all in one
and,
package?
you know, I've seen this, just in women that I've known over the years. You know, the type of males that when they decided to settle down,
Uh-huh.
you know, and these aren't the type of males that they're attracted to, you know, sexually attracted to.
Right.
And I think men do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, men do the same thing, look for, you know,
One girl to marry, one girl.
wife material.
Yeah. Wife material or not wife material. You get to put into the category right away, depending on
Right, exactly.
how you behave and how you dress and how you act.
Yeah, I think that we're evolving.
Yes.
And, we're just going to go, it's going to be difficult, I think, for some time to come.
Mm-hmm.
Until, you know, we transition out of, you
The
know,
old.
the old way and the old belief system.
Right. Let me skip on to oxytocin, which I had mentioned before, because you said that men do become bonded by oxytocin, but I had always thought that the effects of it were counteracted by testosterone.
Well, a man bonds through, the more a man has sex with a woman, the more likely he is to become bonded to her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why over time a man can just kind of, you know, and you'll notice women don't put as many restraints on a man until after she gets them, you
Right.
know, so after he becomes attached to her. But yeah, a man becomes attached to a woman through having sex with her.
And does that also happens to the female, right?
Yes, the female too.
Now, that's is that if they're having an orgasm or not? I mean, if she's not having an orgasm with him, will she become bonded still?
Well, see, here's where it gets tricky because you wonder how much of it's psychological, the woman just wanting the commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you're talking to a woman that just wants a commitment from a guy, she's not nearly as interested in sex. Sex is not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
You know, when commitment isn't the priority, sex is a bigger deal. But, I think that a woman is more bonded to a man when she has an orgasm. We're just naturally inclined to, you know, to be motivated to want sex with someone who can, you know,
Mm-hmm.
provide us with an orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's just, you know, in talking with women too, I remember one particular woman who says that she will not have an orgasm with someone until she knows she really likes them because that does cloud her.
Oh.
You know, she does get that attached feeling towards him.
Right.
Towards the male she's with.
Right. Let's touch upon, you mentioned the 4-year itch, and again, your book was the first place I read about that, and then ever since then I've been hearing about it. Can you talk about the 4-year itch?
Yeah, that's, you know, they used to think that it was a 7-year itch,
Right.
which I think probably is the itch started at 4 years and people just took them 3 years to get out of their marriage. But I really do.
Probably.
But at 4 years, they believe that is the human mating cycle. That's how, you know, a female would have a child, and at 4 years, that's when she'd be ready to reproduce again. You know, rearing the offspring. I mean, we keep our children now until they're, you know, 20, 30 years old. But in the past, to rear offspring is that they believe we have a 4-year mating cycle. because the 4-year breaking up of relationships happens across every culture.
Right. And here's one thing that men always say. They're afraid that women are going to change after marriage, and they do. So why is that women change? Is it, again, because of their sexuality becoming more to the forefront?
Well, I think that it's because prior to marriage, a woman wants something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can view it the same way as a man changes after you have sex with him. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I think this was more so in the past.
Yeah. Not so much,
but, you'd have sex with a guy and then the guy suddenly isn't as interested. It's the same thing. After the woman gets what she wants, she's not as interested.
Uh-huh.
So there's definitely a change that occurs after marriage. I mean, and it's funny because you talk to men and, because when I interview men, the one thing that I want to know is, did you know of this prior to getting married? Because they do
Right.
claim to be completely caught off guard by it.
Right.
So, since the book that I'm working on now is for men, I specifically asked them, what did you hear about this prior? Did you hear that women change? Did you hear that, any horror stories? And they all say, yeah. So why in the world are you continuing to do something?
Mm-hmm.
And I also asked them, did you believe that prior to getting married, that men, didn't get a fair shake in divorce?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I definitely believe that.
Yeah.
Then why in the hell are you entering into something that you think is unfair?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing that? Why are you entering into an agreement that you believe is unfair to you? Men need to wake up to what they're doing as well.
And why do they say they entered into it if it was unfair?
Why do they say?
Yeah, why did they enter into it if they already knew it was unfair?
Yeah, that's what I asked, and they just say, well, I didn't think it happened to me. Well, why not? Why didn't you think it would happen to you?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't talked to a man yet who wasn't aware there was a 50% divorce rate. Now, he may not have known, there's a good chance he didn't know that women initiated the majority of divorces.
Right.
But he did know that there was a 50% divorce rate. So men have to take responsibility for what they're doing. And just as a woman has to take responsibility for the relationship she's in, because you hear women complain about,
Mm-hmm.
men all the time, well,
Right.
they have to take responsibility for the relationship they're in.
Someone
So
was
it's the
telling
same thing with men.
someone was telling me about a friend of his that got married, and like right after the marriage, he said it was like the day after, which seems kind of weird, but he asked his wife to make him a sandwich or something, and she said no. And I was like, wow. And I said, well, had she made sandwiches?
It does happen pretty quickly.
And I said, did she make sandwiches?
Pretty quickly.
And so,
I remember this one man, he goes, there would never be a million years I would have thought that I wouldn't have gotten sex after I got married. He said, my wife always wanted sex while we were dating.
Yeah,
always. He goes, I didn't want it as much as she did. He said, I'm lucky if we have sex every 2 months. He goes, it happened right after the wedding.
Wow.
It was right after the wedding.
The next day.
So.
I know. And I said, you know what? He should have said, I'm getting an annulment. Because that just shows of things to come. If she's willing to not want to make a sandwich the day after the wedding, then what else is she not going to be willing to do right afterwards?
Yeah, and men have to stop living in fear of it. See, they're so afraid that they're going to get screwed and divorced. They're so afraid of these things that they don't even try, and they don't gather the necessary information either.
Mm-hmm.
Because men just need to be educated. They need to gather the necessary information and not just roll over in cases of divorce.
Right, exactly. And you also mentioned the pass-through effect. Do you remember that in your book?
The pass-through effect.
Uh-huh.
Oh, where you transition from the chemical-based relationship, the role relationship, into a more conscious relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, in order to have relationships today,
mm-hmm.
because people don't need to stay together, they have to educate themselves on their own behavior, relationships. Typically what we've learned from our parents is not a model to go by.
No.
A lot of us, didn't have great family lives. And even if we did, there still may have been the element of our parents had to be together. So as far as relationship skills, which women think they just naturally have great relationship skills, and they really don't.
No, they
Women
don't.
have as much to learn in that regard as men do. But people really have to today educate themselves on relationships and become aware of their part, what they're doing, as opposed to focusing on the other and what they're doing. You know, and that's the biggest problem in relationships. Each person, they kind of view their partner as a power struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, once you get married, it's just a big power struggle, and they never make it to. There's a great book called The 7 Levels of Intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
and the author Matthew Kelly mentions that there's 7 levels, and the third level is the power struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And he said people rarely pass through to the lower levels, the higher levels of intimacy.
Yeah.
They just stay right there in their marriages, and it's really sad. So, you know, that in order to move into a more satisfying relationship, you have to educate yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Someone said there should be
and it has to be your goal. You know, instead of people just wanting to stay together,
mm-hmm.
We need to wipe that stay together out of our system and instead focus on trying to have a great relationship.
Right.
You know, because you can stay together and have a shitty relationship.
Yeah, be miserable.
You know, and be absolutely miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships that last in the past, a lot of them were not happy unions.
No.
So the focus needs to shift from staying together to having a great relationship.
Yeah, and a lot of the couples that I talk to that are married, a lot of them are not having sex or rarely having it.
I know. It's amazing how few people have sex.
Yeah.
I mean, sex is really not, you know, it's not a big part of married life.
No, apparently not. That's probably why
there's a lot of unhappiness and a lot of loneliness in marriage.
So
why? It's really sad. And again, that's just lack of education. You know, that's the whole, I think I'm going to meet someone and live happily ever after. And then so you get married and then you're like, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now?
Right.
And, you know, I say people often, they make a commitment to stay together forever and do nothing. They have no, you know, they don't have like a life plan.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole thing is you have to think about do you have a vision? What is the vision that you have for your life? What is the vision that you have for a relationship? Do you share a similar vision with someone?
Yeah.
You know, these are things that people don't think about. The relationship doesn't serve a purpose.
Right, they're just going
on. You know, it was survival in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That purpose is no longer there. So there must be another purpose for your relationship to serve.
Right. I think it's to grow together, to become more enlightened. If you can do that with another person rather than just by yourself, it's a lot easier.
Yes. You know, yes. And it's very difficult to do, though.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do with another person, but I don't think that people don't have a clear-cut, this is my vision. You know, this is what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, hey, we're going to hook up and be together and life will be easy and we'll lay on the couch and
live happily ever
really
after.
Do nothing.
Right.
You know?
I know, because I always thought, like, for me, like, marriage was like, it was like one step closer to the grave.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of women are starting to view marriage as death. And, you know, that's sad too, because relationships can be very fulfilling. But I think that, you know, I just think that it's sad that we're raising females to, you know, to make their priority in life now to grow and personal happiness. But we're not raising males that way. We're raising males to believe that their primary purpose is to make females happy, and that's not fair. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're just turned the tables, and now men are starting to lack the same energy and vitality that women used to lack. Women used to have no goal for their life other than find a man to support me.
Right.
You know, they weren't very interesting. You know,
right?
Because they had no expectations for their life. You know, it was just I'm going to get married. Mm-hmm. And now we're kind of raising males that way. You know, to just be, you know, everything is how can you make a female happy? Mm-hmm. And so men are becoming much less interesting. And so I think that we need to start balancing. You know, there's a pretty well-known person that opened a school just for girls out of the country.
Uh-huh.
And I heard someone make the comment, who are these girls going to marry?
Oops.
You know, and some people think, well, you know, not that they'd want to get married.
Right.
You know, why should a girl just have the expectation to get married?
Yeah.
But that isn't the point. The point is, who are these girls going to have relationships with? Because both males and females want to have, you know, fulfilling relationships.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be in relationships.
Yeah.
But how can an educated female have a relationship with a male that, that doesn't have any education, that doesn't know those things. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
So in my opinion, it was just creating imbalance. I think that we really have to send the same message to both males and females as far as, personal development and growth and happiness and that type of thing.
Why do you think the divorce rate is so high?
Excuse me?
Why do you think the divorce rate is so high?
Well, I think the divorce rate is so high because, people don't have to stay married. They just don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, it's just kind of like, if when the world was flat. Let's say that when the world was flat, everybody was building a fence around their house so that they wouldn't fall. But when you find out the world's not flat, you don't need that fence anymore.
Right.
It might take a while for people to feel comfortable not building that fence. That's the same thing with marriage. Marriage was an institution that was set up so that people could survive.
Mm-hmm.
The man worked and the female raised the kids. And there were things that happened at the same time that caused lifelong monogamy to be
a reality.
Needed.
Mm-hmm.
So if it wasn't always that way. There was a time in history when lifetime monogamy became the practice, and now that's not needed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So people are still doing it.
Yeah.
Because they still think, oh, this is just the way that it is. In the past, they didn't teach females, hey, you really would like to be with more than one guy, but you can't do it because this guy's going to support you. That's not how they taught females.
No.
They thought this is shameful for you. You wouldn't want to do that. So we're just outgrowing a belief system that was set up for a very specific reason. And unfortunately, we don't acknowledge these things on a societal level. We really don't do it. You just kind of outgrow certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this does not mean that people aren't going to be in committed relationships. It doesn't mean that some people won't stay in relationships until, for lifelong relationships.
Yeah.
It just means that this isn't going to be just the norm. Hey, I'm just going to get married without any conscious thought because I assume this is just what I want. We aren't going to just procreate like animals. We'll actually make conscious choices. Do I want to have children? Mm-hmm. Is nurturing children something that I want to do?
Right.
As opposed to just assuming that it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably why I never got married, because I said, well, do I need to do this? And I thought, I don't need to do this right now, so hopefully more people...
Did you ever have children?
No.
No?
No, luckily I've never had the urge to have children, so I never had that dilemma of, I want children, but I don't have a guy to have them with. So in that sense, I was lucky.
Yeah, I never had the impulse for children either.
Yeah.
I remember a man reviewed my book, and he said, maybe the something's missing is children, because the author mentioned she didn't have children. And I thought, there wasn't one woman in my sampling other than me that didn't. All of them had kids.
Yeah, right.
So he thought just because I didn't have kids, that maybe all the women I had interviewed, that, that's what was missing in their life was children.
No.
The majority of women I speak with have children.
Yeah, but also...
it was just that I didn't have them.
And I know of...
I just made the correlation that I had lost interest in having sex with my husband in the same way that these women were claiming that they lost interest in it, and they were blaming it on the fact that they had children. So it's, it was after my kids. That's an acceptable excuse that women give to their husbands. It's because I had kids, I just lost my desire.
Sure.
But if it happens to women that don't have kids, there was some connection going on. It was like, wait a minute, I don't have kids, and I feel exactly the same way.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the hour. It's been very interesting and insightful.
Well, it was great talking to you, Lucia.
Well, thank you. It was great speaking with you, and of course, I hope that I'll be able to get a copy of your next book, and I'll definitely have you on again to discuss this new book that you've written for men. What is it called?
It's going to be a trilogy. Women's Infidelity is going to be a trilogy, so it's Women's Infidelity, Women's Infidelity 2, and Women's Infidelity 3.
Wonderful. Okay, and your website is women'sinfidelity.com, and they can purchase the first book, Women's Infidelity, there today.
Right. Yeah, they can go to the website.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, we've come to the end of the hour, and I guess I won't be able to talk about pink. Aw. I'll save that for next time. So this has been The Art of Love. Thank you so much for joining me today. And remember, love inspires, empowers, uplifts, and enlightens.
It's my party.